Marcus Williams pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway of Meridian Tech Corporation, the wheels squeaking softly against the polished floor. At 35, he had been working as a janitor at the company for 3 years, arriving before dawn and leaving after most employees had gone home. His dark hands, calloused from years of hard work, gripped the cart handle as he made his way toward the executive floor. The building buzzed with activity even at 7 in the morning. Engineers hurried past him with coffee cups and laptops, discussing project deadlines and technical specifications. Marcus listened quietly as he worked, absorbing conversations about engine designs, fuel efficiency, and breakthrough technologies. Most employees barely noticed him, treating him like part of the furniture, which suited Marcus just fine. It gave him the perfect opportunity to learn. What none of them knew was that Marcus Williams held a doctorate in mechanical engineering from MIT. He had graduated at the top of his class 15 years ago, filled with dreams of revolutionizing the automotive industry, but life had other plans. His father fell ill just as he was starting his career, requiring expensive medical treatments that drained the family savings. Marcus took whatever job he could find to support his family, and somehow the years slipped away. When his father passed 2 years ago, Marcus found himself stuck in a cycle of survival. The engineering world had moved on without him, and his resume gap seemed impossible to explain. Companies wanted fresh graduates or experienced professionals, not someone who had been out of the field for over a decade. So he continued mopping floors and emptying trash cans, watching from the sidelines as younger engineers worked on projects he could solve in his sleep. On this particular morning, Marcus was cleaning the executive conference room when he overheard heated voices coming from the adjoining office. Through the partially open door, he could see Victoria Sterling, the 38-year-old CEO of Meridian Tech, pacing behind her glass desk. Her perfectly styled blonde hair caught the morning sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and her expensive navy suit spoke of power and authority. Victoria was known throughout the industry as a brilliant businesswoman who had transformed Meridian Tech from a struggling startup into a billion-dollar corporation in just 8 years. She was ruthless in negotiations, demanding perfection from her employees, and had little patience for excuses. Her success had earned her respect, but also a reputation for being cold and sometimes cruel to those she considered beneath her. The prototype is still failing. Victoria's voice carried clearly into the conference room where Marcus was wiping down the table. We've been working on this hybrid engine for 2 years, and we're no closer to solving the combustion efficiency problem. The board is breathing down my neck, and our competitors are gaining ground every day. Through the crack in the door, Marcus could see 3 senior engineers standing uncomfortably before Victoria's desk. Dr. James Harrison, the head of engineering, shifted nervously as he tried to explain the latest setback. Ms. Sterling, we've run every possible simulation. The fuel mixture keeps creating irregular combustion patterns that reduce efficiency by 30%. We need more time. Victoria slammed her hand on the desk, making everyone in the room jump. We don't have time. The investor presentation is in 6 weeks, and we promised them a working prototype. If we can't deliver, we'll lose the $200 million funding round that will make or break this company. Marcus paused in his cleaning, his engineering mind automatically analyzing the problem he was hearing. Irregular combustion patterns in hybrid engines were typically caused by timing issues between the electric and gasoline systems. He had written his doctoral thesis on optimizing combustion efficiency in hybrid powertrains, and he could think of at least 3 potential solutions to their problem. But he was just the janitor. Nobody would listen to him, and even if they did, they would probably think he was crazy for speaking up. So he continued wiping down chairs and emptying wastebaskets, pretending not to hear the conversation that was growing more heated by the minute. What if we simplified the fuel injection system? Suggested Dr. Sarah Chen, one of the younger engineers on the team. Maybe we're overthinking the solution. Victoria's laugh was sharp and humorless. Simplified? Sarah, this is cutting-edge technology, not a lawnmower engine. We need innovation, not kindergarten solutions. Marcus winced at the dismissive tone. In his experience, the best engineering solutions were often the simplest ones. Complexity for its own sake usually created more problems than it solved. He finished cleaning the conference table and was about to move on when Victoria's voice rose again. I swear at this point I'd marry anyone who could fix this engine, she declared dramatically. throwing her hands up in exasperation. Hell, I'd marry the janitor if he could solve what you brilliant engineers can't seem to figure out. The engineers chuckled nervously at what they assumed was a joke, but Marcus could hear the genuine frustration in Victoria's voice. She was under enormous pressure, and her career was riding on the success of this project. Despite her harsh words and condescending attitude, Marcus found himself feeling sympathetic toward her situation. As he pushed his cart out of the conference room, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the engine problem. That evening, he went home to his small apartment and pulled out his old engineering textbooks, which he had kept despite everything. He spent the night sketching diagrams and running calculations, his mind fully engaged with a technical challenge for the first time in years. By morning, Marcus had developed a comprehensive solution to Meridian Tech's combustion efficiency problem. It involved redesigning the timing system and modifying the fuel injection sequence in a way that would actually simplify the overall engine design while dramatically improving performance. The solution was elegant, practical, and would cost less to implement than their current approach. But as he got dressed for another day of cleaning offices and emptying trash cans, Marcus wondered if he would ever have the courage to speak up. After all, who would believe that the quiet janitor they barely noticed could solve a problem that had stumped their best engineers for 2 years? The next morning, Marcus arrived at Meridian Tech with a folder hidden under the cleaning supplies in his cart. Inside were detailed diagrams and calculations for solving the hybrid engine problem, written out in his careful handwriting during another sleepless night. He had gone over the solution dozens of times, checking and rechecking his work until he was absolutely certain it would work. As he made his rounds, Marcus noticed the tension in the building had increased dramatically. Engineers huddled in worried groups, speaking in hushed tones about deadlines and potential layoffs. Word had spread quickly that the company's future depended on solving the engine problem, and everyone knew they were running out of time. Victoria Sterling looked even more stressed than usual when Marcus glimpsed her through her office window. She was on the phone constantly, probably dealing with impatient investors and board members who wanted answers she couldn't give them. Her usual perfect composure was starting to crack, and Marcus could see the exhaustion in her eyes. Around midday, Marcus was cleaning the break room on the engineering floor when he overheard Dr. Harrison talking to his team. "We tried the modified injection sequence last night," the head engineer was saying, his voice heavy with defeat. "Still getting the same efficiency problems. At this point, I think we need to accept that maybe this technology just isn't ready for market. But if we give up now, the company could go under," Dr. Chen replied quietly. "Victoria's staked everything on this project. She's turned down 3 acquisition offers because she believes in this engine." Marcus finished wiping down the coffee machine and was about to leave when another engineer joined the conversation. "Maybe we should consider bringing in outside consultants," he suggested. "Fresh eyes might see something we're missing." "With what money?" Dr. Harrison laughed bitterly. "We've already blown through most of our development budget. Victoria would never approve hiring expensive consultants at this point." That afternoon, Marcus found himself cleaning the executive conference room again, just as Victoria was wrapping up a video call with what sounded like very unhappy investors. He could hear her voice through the door, strained and defensive as she tried to explain the delays. "I understand your concerns, Mr. Peterson," Victoria was saying, "but breakthrough technology takes time to perfect. We're closer than ever to solving the remaining issues." The response from the speakerphone was harsh and clear. "Ms. Sterling, we've heard this same update for the past 6 months. Our patience is wearing thin. If you can't show us a working prototype within 4 weeks, we'll have to seriously reconsider our investment." After the call ended, Marcus heard the sound of something hitting the wall, followed by Victoria's frustrated voice. "Damn it. 4 weeks? They might as well ask me to perform miracles." Marcus knocked softly on the doorframe, pretending he needed to clean the conference room. Victoria looked up, her professional mask slipping for just a moment to reveal the stress and worry underneath. "Oh, it's you," she said, barely acknowledging his presence. "Go ahead and clean. I'll be out of your way in a minute." But instead of leaving, Victoria slumped in her chair and stared out the window at the city skyline. Marcus had never seen her look so defeated. For a moment, she seemed less like the intimidating CEO and more like a person carrying an enormous burden. "You know what the worst part is?" Victoria said suddenly, not really talking to Marcus but just needing to voice her thoughts. "Everyone thinks I'm this heartless businesswoman who only cares about money, but this company employs over 3,000 people. If we fail, all those families lose their livelihoods. The janitors, the secretaries, the engineers, everyone depends on me making the right decisions." Marcus paused in his work, surprised by this rare moment of vulnerability. For the first time, he saw Victoria as more than just the harsh boss who barely noticed him. She was carrying the weight of thousands of people's futures on her shoulders. "The stupid thing is," Victoria continued, "I keep thinking about what I said yesterday, about marrying someone who could fix this engine. I meant it as a joke, but honestly, at this point I'd consider almost anything if it meant saving this company." Marcus's heart began racing. This was his moment, his chance to speak up. He reached into his cart and pulled out the folder containing his solution. His hands trembled slightly as he approached Victoria's desk. "Excuse me, Ms. Sterling," he said quietly. Victoria looked up, seemingly surprised that he had spoken. In 3 years of working at the company, Marcus had never said more than a polite greeting to her. "Yes, what is it?" she asked, her tone somewhat impatient but not unkind. Marcus placed the folder on her desk. "I know this might sound crazy, but I think I have a solution to your engine problem." Victoria stared at him for a long moment, as if she wasn't sure she had heard correctly. Then she glanced at the folder and back at Marcus, her expression shifting from confusion to something that might have been amusement. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" she asked slowly. "The combustion efficiency problem with your hybrid engine," Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. "I've been listening to the engineers discuss it, and I think I know how to fix it." Victoria leaned back in her chair, and Marcus could see her struggling not to laugh. "You think you know how to fix it? You're the janitor." "Yes, ma'am, I am. But I'm also a mechanical engineer with a doctorate from MIT. I specialized in hybrid powertrain systems." The amusement on Victoria's face quickly faded, replaced by skepticism and something that looked like irritation. "Right. And I suppose you've been hiding your engineering degree all this time because you enjoy mopping floors?" Marcus felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment, but he pressed on. "I know how it sounds, Ms. Sterling. But if you look at what's in that folder, you'll see that I understand your problem better than you might think." Victoria picked up the folder and opened it, her eyes scanning the first page of diagrams and calculations. Her expression remained skeptical, but Marcus noticed she was actually reading rather than just dismissing his work outright. "These are quite detailed," she admitted after a few moments. "Did you copy these from somewhere?" "No, ma'am. I worked them out myself over the past 2 nights. The solution involves modifying the timing synchronization between your electric and combustion systems, along with a redesigned fuel injection sequence that will actually simplify your overall engine architecture." Victoria continued reading, her frown deepening as she studied the technical specifications. Marcus could see her sharp mind working through the calculations, and despite her obvious skepticism, she was clearly taking his work seriously. "This is interesting," she said finally, looking up at him with new eyes. "But even if these calculations are correct, do you have any idea how ridiculous this situation is? My janitor is trying to solve a problem that my team of PhD engineers can't figure out. I understand how it looks, Ms. Sterling, but good ideas can come from anywhere." Victoria closed the folder and studied Marcus for a long moment. "Tell you what, Mr. Williams. Marcus Williams. Mr. Williams, you want me to take you seriously? Then prove it. We have a test engine in the lab downstairs. If you can actually implement this solution and make it work, I'll not only believe you, I'll remember what I said about marrying whoever could fix this engine." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. "Are you serious?" Victoria's smile was challenging and somewhat cruel. "Dead serious. But when this doesn't work, I want you to promise me you'll stop pretending to be something you're not and just focus on doing your actual job. Deal?" Marcus looked at her extended hand, knowing that his entire future hung in the balance of this moment. Deal, he said, shaking her hand firmly. Word spread through Meridian Tech like wildfire. By the time Marcus and Victoria reached the engineering lab in the basement, a small crowd had already gathered. Dr. Harrison stood with his arms crossed, looking both curious and annoyed at the disruption to his team's work. Several other engineers whispered among themselves, clearly skeptical about what they were witnessing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria announced as they entered the lab, "meet Marcus Williams, our janitor, who claims he can solve our engine problem in a matter of hours." The reaction was immediate. Some engineers laughed outright while others just shook their heads in disbelief. Dr. Chen looked embarrassed for Marcus, as if she felt sorry for him. Dr. Harrison stepped forward, his expression stern. "Victoria, with all due respect, we don't have time for games. We're under enormous pressure here and we can't afford to waste lab time on—" He gestured vaguely at Marcus. "Whatever this is." "I gave Mr. Williams my word that he could try," Victoria replied coolly. "Besides, what's the worst that could happen? If he fails, we're exactly where we started. If by some miracle he succeeds, our problems are solved." Marcus felt the weight of every eye in the room on him. These were some of the brightest minds in the industry, people who had dedicated their entire careers to engineering excellence. And here he was wearing his janitor's uniform, claiming he could accomplish what they couldn't. Dr. Harrison led them to a workstation where the prototype engine sat partially disassembled. It was a beautiful piece of machinery, sleek and complex, representing years of development and millions of dollars in research. Marcus approached it slowly, his trained eye taking in every component and connection. "So," Dr. Harrison said, his tone barely concealing his irritation, "what exactly do you think you see that we've missed?" Marcus opened his folder and pulled out the detailed diagrams he had prepared. "The problem isn't with the engine itself," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "It's with the timing coordination between the electric motor and the combustion engine. You're trying to optimize them separately, but they need to work as a unified system." "We've run countless simulations on the timing systems," Dr. Chen interjected. "The synchronization is already optimized within acceptable parameters." "Acceptable parameters for traditional engines?" "Yes," Marcus replied, pointing to a specific section of his diagram. "But hybrid systems operate under different thermal and mechanical stresses. The fuel injection timing needs to be adjusted based on the electric motor's power output in real time, not according to a preset algorithm." Dr. Harrison leaned over to examine Marcus's calculations, his frown deepening as he studied the work. These modifications would require completely reprogramming the engine control unit. We'd need to rewrite thousands of lines of code. "Actually, no," Marcus said, moving to the computer terminal connected to the engine. "The existing code structure can handle it with some modifications to the timing subroutines. The hardware is already capable of the adjustments we need." Victoria watched from the side, her arms crossed and her expression unreadable. She had expected Marcus to embarrass himself quickly and retreat back to his cleaning duties. Instead, he was speaking with the confidence and knowledge of someone who clearly understood the technology at a deep level. For the next hour, Marcus worked steadily at the computer, modifying code while explaining his reasoning to the increasingly attentive engineers. His fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, writing complex algorithms that integrated the electric and combustion systems in ways the original programming had never attempted. "There," Marcus said finally, saving his changes, "the timing system is now adaptive rather than fixed. It will continuously adjust the fuel injection sequence based on real-time feedback from both the electric motor and combustion engine." Dr. Harrison moved to the terminal and began reviewing Marcus's code. His initial skepticism was gradually being replaced by professional curiosity. "This is actually quite elegant," he admitted reluctantly. "But theory and practice are two different things. The question is whether it will actually improve combustion efficiency." "Only one way to find out," Marcus replied, moving to the engine controls. "Should we run a test?" Victoria stepped forward. "Yes, let's see what happens." Marcus activated the engine and the lab filled with the quiet hum of electric motors and the deeper rumble of combustion. For the first few minutes, everything seemed normal. The engine ran smoothly, but there was no obvious improvement in performance. "Efficiency is still reading 30% below optimal," Dr. Chen reported from the monitoring station. "Nothing's changed." Marcus wasn't discouraged. "The system needs time to learn and adapt." The algorithm I wrote analyzes the engine's performance in real time and gradually optimizes the timing, based on actual operating conditions rather than theoretical models. As they watched, the efficiency readings began to change. Slowly at first, then more rapidly, the numbers on the monitors started climbing. 25% below optimal. 20%. 15%. What's happening? Dr. Harrison asked, moving closer to the monitors. The system is finding the optimal timing for these specific operating conditions, Marcus explained. Every engine is slightly different due to manufacturing tolerances and wear patterns. My algorithm lets the engine teach itself how to run most efficiently. 10% below optimal, 5%, and then, to everyone's amazement, the efficiency reading began climbing above the theoretical maximum they had been targeting. That's impossible, Dr. Chen whispered, staring at her monitor. We're reading 112% of optimal efficiency. The system must be malfunctioning, Marcus smiled. It's not malfunctioning. The optimal efficiency you were targeting was based on running the electric and combustion systems as separate entities. When they're truly integrated and adaptive, the combined system can actually exceed the sum of its parts. The lab fell silent except for the smooth hum of the engine. Everyone stared at the monitors showing performance numbers that exceeded their wildest expectations. After 2 years of struggle and frustration, the solution had been implemented in less than 2 hours. Dr. Harrison ran additional diagnostics, checking and rechecking the results. The readings are accurate, he announced finally. Fuel consumption is down 35%, power output is up 20%, and emissions are within acceptable limits. Victoria stepped forward, her usual composure completely shattered. She stared at Marcus as if seeing him for the first time. How? She asked simply. Sometimes the best solutions come from looking at problems differently, Marcus replied. Your team was focused on optimizing individual components. I approached it as a systems integration challenge. But you're a janitor, Dr. Chen said, still struggling to process what had just happened. He's a mechanical engineer with a doctorate from MIT. Victoria said quietly. Aren't you, Mr. Williams? Marcus nodded. Yes, ma'am. I've been working as a janitor for 3 years, but engineering is my real profession. Dr. Harrison looked stunned. Why didn't you ever say anything? Why were you cleaning our offices instead of working with us? Because sometimes life doesn't go according to plan, Marcus replied. And because nobody looks twice at the janitor. I've learned more about this company's challenges by listening while I worked than I ever could have in formal meetings. Victoria was still staring at the performance monitors, watching the engine run with efficiency levels that would revolutionize the industry. Mr. Williams, she said finally, I believe we need to have a serious conversation about your future with this company. And, she added with a strange smile, about a promise I made yesterday. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Meridian Tech not knowing what to expect. Word of yesterday's breakthrough had spread throughout the company overnight, and he found himself the subject of curious stares and whispered conversations. Some employees looked at him with newfound respect, while others seemed confused about how to interact with someone who had been the invisible janitor just 24 hours earlier. Victoria had called an emergency meeting with the senior engineering staff and the board of directors for 9 o'clock. Marcus had been asked to attend, though he wasn't sure in what capacity. He still wore his janitor's uniform, not having any other work clothes, which made him feel even more out of place among the suited executives gathering in the main conference room. When Victoria entered the room, the conversations died down immediately. She looked impeccable as always, but Marcus could see a new energy in her demeanor. The stress lines around her eyes had softened, and there was a confidence in her step that had been missing for weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria began, I'm sure you've all heard about yesterday's developments. Mr. Marcus Williams, who many of you know as our janitor, has successfully solved the combustion efficiency problem that has been plaguing our hybrid engine project for 2 years. Board member Robert Chen, Sarah's father and one of the company's original investors, leaned forward in his chair. Victoria, while we're certainly pleased about the technical breakthrough, we need to understand exactly what happened here. How did a janitor accomplish what our engineering team couldn't? Dr. Harrison, who had spent most of the night running additional tests on Marcus's solution, stood up to address the room. I'll be honest with you all. When Victoria first told me what was happening, I thought it was some kind of joke. But Mr. Williams's solution is not only effective, it's brilliant. His approach to adaptive timing integration is years ahead of current industry standards. But he's been working as a janitor, insisted board member Patricia Walsh, her voice sharp with confusion. How do we explain this to our investors? It makes our entire engineering department look incompetent. Marcus felt his face flush with embarrassment, but Victoria quickly intervened. Mr. Williams, would you please tell the board about your background? Marcus stood feeling incredibly awkward in his uniform among all the expensive suits. I have a doctorate in mechanical engineering from MIT, with a specialization in hybrid powertrain systems. I graduated 15 years ago and worked briefly in the automotive industry before family circumstances forced me to take whatever employment I could find. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Patricia Walsh looked skeptical. And you chose to work as a janitor rather than pursuing engineering positions? I chose to support my family, Marcus replied quietly. Sometimes our circumstances don't align with our dreams. The gap in my engineering resume made it difficult to find positions in my field, so I took the work that was available. Robert Chen nodded slowly. That's actually quite admirable, but why didn't you approach us sooner? We've been struggling with this problem for years. Because who would have listened to the janitor? Marcus asked simply. I heard your conversations, your frustrations, but I had no platform to offer suggestions. Until Ms. Sterling gave me the opportunity yesterday. Victoria stepped forward. Which brings us to the real reason for this meeting. Mr. Williams has not only solved our immediate technical problem, he's shown us a new approach to innovation that could transform how we develop technology. I'm recommending that we offer him a position as our new Chief Technology Officer. The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Dr. Harrison looked shocked, while several board members began speaking at once. Patricia Walsh raised her voice above the others. Victoria, surely you're not serious. We can't promote someone from janitor to CTO overnight. Why not? Victoria challenged. He's more qualified than anyone else in this room for that position. He has the technical expertise, he understands our systems better than anyone, and he's proven he can solve problems that stump our current team. Dr. Harrison, who had initially been resistant to Marcus's involvement, stood up again. I have to agree with Victoria. After working with Mr. Williams yesterday and reviewing his solution in detail, I can say without hesitation that his understanding of hybrid systems is extraordinary. He would be an asset to this company in any engineering capacity. Board member Thomas Grant, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. There's also the matter of optics to consider. Promoting someone from the janitorial staff to a senior executive position would be an incredible public relations story. It shows that we value innovation and talent regardless of someone's current circumstances. Marcus listened to the discussion about his future with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was everything he had dreamed of for years, but it was happening so quickly that he felt overwhelmed. Miss Sterling, he said, I'm honored by your offer, but I want to make sure this is about more than just one successful solution. I don't want to be a token or a publicity stunt. Victoria smiled at him, and for the first time since he'd known her, the smile seemed genuinely warm. Mr. Williams, your solution isn't just a technical fix. It represents a completely new way of thinking about hybrid systems. The adaptive integration you've developed could be applied to dozens of other projects we're working on. We need that kind of innovative thinking. Plus, she added with a hint of her old mischievous smile, there's still the matter of a promise I made. The room fell silent as everyone remembered Victoria's dramatic declaration about marrying whoever could fix the engine. Robert Chen looked confused. What promise? Victoria's cheeks turned slightly pink, but she maintained her composure. In a moment of frustration yesterday, I said I would marry anyone who could solve our engine problem. Mr. Williams has certainly held up his end of that bargain. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia Walsh looked like she might faint while Dr. Harrison struggled to hide a smile. Marcus felt his heart racing as he tried to process what Victoria had just said. Mr. Sterling, Marcus said carefully, surely you weren't serious about that. Victoria looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. I'm always serious about my promises, Mr. Williams. The question is whether you're interested in collecting on this particular one. Thomas Grant cleared his throat loudly. Perhaps we should focus on the business matters at hand and leave personal discussions for later. Of course, Victoria agreed, though her eyes remained on Marcus. Mr. Williams, do you accept our offer for the CTO position? Marcus thought about his small apartment, his years of quiet struggle, and the engineering dreams he had almost given up on. Yes, he said firmly. I accept. Excellent, Victoria said. Your first order of business will be implementing your hybrid system improvements across our entire product line. We'll also want you to review all our current projects for potential efficiency gains. As the meeting broke up and board members filed out, discussing the remarkable turn of events, Victoria approached Marcus. There's one more thing we need to discuss privately, she said. About that other matter. Marcus looked at her, still hardly believing how much his life had changed in less than 24 hours. Mrs. Sterling, you don't need to feel obligated to honor what was obviously a joke made in frustration. Victoria's expression grew serious. Mr. Williams, I never joke about my word. But more importantly, yesterday you showed me something I didn't expect to see. What's that? Integrity, honor, intelligence combined with humility. Those are rare qualities, especially in someone who has every right to be bitter about how life has treated him. She paused, studying his face. I meant what I said, but only if it's something you would actually want, not just an obligation to fulfill. Marcus looked at this remarkable woman who had just changed his entire life, seeing her not as the intimidating CEO, but as someone who had also been carrying enormous burdens. Miss Sterling, I think we should probably get to know each other as colleagues first before we consider anything else. Victoria smiled, and this time, it reached her eyes. That sounds like exactly the kind of thoughtful approach I would expect from you, Dr. Williams. 6 months later, Meridian Tech had transformed into an industry leader. Marcus's adaptive integration technology had been successfully implemented across 5 different product lines, increasing efficiency by an average of 40% while reducing manufacturing costs. The company's stock price had tripled, and they were fielding acquisition offers from major automotive manufacturers around the world. Marcus had settled into his role as CTO with remarkable ease. His years of quiet observation had given him unique insights into the company's operations, and his collaborative approach had earned him respect from engineers who had initially been skeptical. Dr. Harrison had become one of his strongest supporters, often remarking that Marcus had a gift for seeing solutions that others missed. The relationship between Marcus and Victoria had evolved slowly and naturally. What had started as mutual professional respect had grown into something deeper, as they worked closely together on strategic planning and innovation initiatives. Marcus had moved out of his small apartment into a modern downtown loft, but he still drove the same modest car and maintained the humble perspective that had served him well. Victoria, meanwhile, had begun showing a softer side that few people had ever seen. Marcus's influence had encouraged her to be more collaborative with employees and less driven by fear and pressure. The company culture had improved dramatically, and employee satisfaction surveys showed the highest ratings in Meridian Tech's history. Their first official date hadn't been planned. They had been working late on a presentation for potential investors when Marcus suggested they grab dinner instead of ordering takeout to the office again. Over pasta and wine at a quiet Italian restaurant, they talked about everything except work, their childhoods, dreams, fears, and the unexpected paths that had led them to this moment. You know, Victoria had said that night, when I made that comment about marrying whoever could fix the engine, I never imagined it might actually happen. Are you saying it might? Marcus had asked, surprised by his own boldness. I'm saying that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, Victoria had replied with a smile that made his heart skip. Now, as Marcus stood in the engineering lab working on his latest project, a revolutionary battery system that could extend electric vehicle range by 300%, he reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. The same hands that had pushed a cleaning cart now designed systems that would shape the future of transportation. Dr. Chen approached his workstation, carrying a tablet with test results. The prototype batteries are exceeding all projections, she reported excitedly. We're looking at a range of over 800 miles on a single charge. That's excellent, Marcus replied, reviewing the data. How are the charging times? Even better than we hoped. Full charge in under 15 minutes using standard infrastructure. Sarah's enthusiasm was infectious. Marcus, this technology is going to change everything. We'll be able to eliminate range anxiety completely. As they discussed the implications of the breakthrough, Victoria entered the lab with a group of executives from a major European automotive company. Over the past months, she had become much more hands-on with the technical side of the business, often visiting the labs to see the latest developments firsthand. "Dr. Williams," she said formally, though her eyes sparkled with warmth, "would you mind showing our guests the battery prototype?" Marcus spent the next hour demonstrating the technology, explaining the innovative chemistry and thermal management systems that made the performance possible. The visiting executives were clearly impressed, asking detailed questions and taking careful notes. After the presentation, as the visitors were led to a conference room for contract discussions, Victoria lingered in the lab. "Another revolutionary breakthrough," she said proudly. "You're making quite a habit of this." "We're making a habit of this," Marcus corrected. "None of these innovations would be possible without the team and resources you've provided." Victoria stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Speaking of habits, I've been thinking about that promise I made. The one we've been taking our time with." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Their relationship had been building steadily, but they had both been cautious about mixing their personal and professional lives. "What about it?" "I think it's time we stopped being so careful about what other people might think," Victoria said. "Life is unpredictable, and sometimes you have to take chances on the things that matter most." Before Marcus could respond, Dr. Harrison burst into the lab with a huge grin on his face. "Marcus, Victoria, you need to see this." He was holding a tablet displaying a news article. "We just won the Innovation Award from the International Automotive Engineering Society. And Marcus, you've been named Engineer of the Year." More colleagues gathered around as word spread through the building. The prestigious award was recognition not just of Marcus's individual achievements, but of Meridian Tech's emergence as a true industry leader. Camera crews from tech journals were already requesting interviews, and the company's communications department was scrambling to manage the media attention. In the midst of the celebration, Marcus caught Victoria's eye across the crowded lab. She was watching him with an expression of pride and something deeper, a look that suggested she was seeing not just the accomplished engineer he had become, but the man she had fallen in love with. Later that evening, after the journalists had left and the initial excitement had died down, Marcus found Victoria in her office reviewing the day's events. The city sparkled through her floor-to-ceiling windows, and she looked beautiful in the soft light from her desk lamp. "Congratulations," she said as he entered. "Engineer of the Year. I always knew you were special even when you were pretending to be just a janitor." "I was never pretending," Marcus replied, sitting across from her desk. "I was always exactly who I am. The circumstances just changed." Victoria stood and walked around her desk to stand in front of him. "You're right. And that's one of the things I love about you. You've never let success change who you are at your core." The word love hung in the air between them, the first time either had used it directly. Marcus stood as well, reaching for her hands. "Victoria," he said softly, "about that promise you made. If the offer is still open, I think I'm ready to accept." Victoria's smile was radiant. "Are you sure?" "People will say you're only marrying me for my money and power." Marcus laughed. "Let them talk. I know the truth, that I'm marrying you because you're brilliant, brave, and beautiful, and because you saw potential in me when no one else would." "Is that a proposal, Dr. Williams?" Marcus dropped to one knee right there in her office, pulling out a simple but elegant ring he had been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. "Victoria Sterling, you challenged me to fix your engine, and I did. Now I'm asking you to let me spend the rest of my life fixing whatever needs fixing, building whatever needs building, and loving you through all of it. Will you marry me?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears as she looked down at the man who had transformed not just her company, but her entire understanding of what was possible. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, Victoria couldn't help but think about the chain of events that had led to this moment. A frustrated comment made in anger, a janitor with hidden depths, and a willingness to look beyond surface appearances had created something beautiful and unexpected. "You know," she said, as Marcus stood and took her in his arms, "this is probably the best business decision I've ever made." "Funny," Marcus replied, kissing her softly. "I was thinking the same thing." 1 year later, the wedding of Victoria Sterling and Marcus Williams became the talk of the business world. The ceremony was held in the same Meridian Tech building where they had first met, but in the beautifully transformed main lobby rather than the basement lab where Marcus had proven himself. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Their love story had begun in the workplace, and the company they had built together was as much a part of their relationship as anything else. The guest list included everyone from board members and major investors to the janitorial staff and assembly line workers. Marcus had insisted that every employee be invited, saying that the people who kept the company running deserved to celebrate alongside those who made the big decisions. It was a gesture that perfectly captured the leadership style he had brought to Meridian Tech. Dr. Harrison served as Marcus's best man, having become not just a colleague but a close friend. In his speech, he talked about how Marcus had taught the entire engineering team to approach problems with humility and fresh perspectives. Marcus showed us that innovation doesn't always come from the most obvious places, he said. Sometimes the best solutions come from someone willing to listen, observe, and think differently. Victoria's maid of honor was Dr. Sarah Chen, who had become one of her closest confidants over the past year. Sarah spoke about watching Victoria transform from a driven but sometimes harsh executive into a leader who inspired loyalty through respect and genuine care for her employees. Marcus didn't just solve our engine problem, she said. He helped Victoria remember that business is ultimately about people. The reception featured a surprise video message from employees at Meridian Tech facilities around the world. The company had expanded internationally, with manufacturing plants in 3 countries and research centers on 2 continents. Workers from Germany to Japan shared their congratulations and talked about how the company's innovative technologies were changing their communities. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when James Rodriguez, a janitor who had been hired just 6 months earlier, approached Marcus during the reception. "Dr. Williams," he said nervously, "I wanted to thank you for something." "What's that, James?" "You changed how people see us. Before, nobody paid attention to the cleaning staff. Now everyone knows that good ideas can come from anywhere. It makes me feel like I matter." Marcus shook the young man's hand firmly. "You do matter, James. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." As the evening wound down, Marcus and Victoria found themselves alone on the rooftop garden of the Meridian Tech building, looking out over the city lights. Victoria's wedding dress sparkled in the moonlight, and Marcus had loosened his tie after hours of dancing and celebration. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been?" Victoria asked, leaning against his shoulder. "If I hadn't been so frustrated that day? If you hadn't decided to speak up?" "Sometimes," Marcus admitted. "But I think we would have found each other eventually. Good things have a way of happening when they're meant to." Victoria turned to look at him. "That's very philosophical for an engineer." "I learned a lot about life during those years when I thought my dreams were over," Marcus replied. "One of the most important lessons was that setbacks aren't permanent unless you let them be." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Thomas Grant, the board member who had supported Marcus's promotion from the beginning. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, "but I wanted to share some news that couldn't wait until Monday." "What is it?" Victoria asked. "We just received confirmation that Tesla wants to license your battery technology for their entire product line. The deal is worth $2 billion over 5 years. Thomas was grinning broadly. "Between that and the contracts we've signed with Ford, BMW, and Toyota, Meridian Tech is now the most valuable automotive technology company in the world." Marcus and Victoria looked at each other in amazement. The success had far exceeded even their most optimistic projections. "That's incredible," Marcus said. "But you know what the best part is?" "What?" Victoria asked. "We're just getting started. I have ideas for technologies that will make our current innovations look like simple toys." Victoria laughed. "Of course you do. My husband the genius." "Our husband the genius," Thomas corrected with a smile. "Marcus belongs to Meridian Tech too, you know." As Thomas left them alone again, Victoria took Marcus's hands. "So what's next for us? More revolutionary technologies? Expanding to new markets? Taking over the world?" "All of that," Marcus said. "But first I was thinking we should take a real honeymoon. Somewhere far away from engines and laboratories and board meetings." "Where did you have in mind?" How about a small island where we can walk on the beach and remember that sometimes the simplest pleasures in life are the most important ones? Victoria smiled. That sounds perfect. But can you promise me something? Anything. Promise me that even when we're successful beyond our wildest dreams, you'll still be the same man who is willing to risk everything to help solve a problem. The man who saw past my harsh exterior to the person underneath. Marcus lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her wedding ring. I promise to always be exactly who I am. And I promise to always see you for who you really are. Brilliant, beautiful, and brave enough to take chances on people others might overlook. As they stood together on the rooftop, where their company's future was being built, Marcus thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a janitor listening to conversations through office doors to the CTO of a revolutionary technology company, married to the woman he loved and respected above all others. The city spread out below them, full of people pursuing their own dreams and facing their own challenges. Somewhere out there, Marcus knew, was another person whose talents were hidden beneath circumstances, another innovator whose ideas might change the world if given the chance. You know what we should do? Marcus said suddenly. What? Start a scholarship program for people who have faced career setbacks or unconventional paths. Help them get back into their fields or pursue new ones. Give them the chances that might not come naturally. Victoria's eyes lit up. Marcus Williams, that's exactly the kind of idea that made me fall in love with you. Always thinking about how to help others rise up. We both know what it's like to face pressure and challenges, Marcus replied. If we can use our success to create opportunities for others, isn't that the best possible outcome? Victoria stood on her tiptoes to kiss him. Have I mentioned lately that I married exactly the right person? Only about 100 times today, Marcus laughed. But I don't mind hearing it again. As they headed back inside to rejoin their guests for the final hours of the celebration, Victoria reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. A casual comment made in frustration had led to a marriage built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine love. The janitor who fixed her engine had fixed so much more than that. He had fixed her perspective on leadership, her understanding of innovation, and her belief in the power of seeing people for who they really are, rather than what their circumstances might suggest. And Marcus, looking at his bride as she laughed with their friends and colleagues, knew that solving the combustion efficiency problem had been the easy part. Building a life and a company with Victoria Sterling, that was the real engineering challenge, and one he looked forward to working on for the rest of his life. The story that had begun with mockery and skepticism had become one of love, success, and the power of believing in potential wherever it might be found. As they danced together one last time before heading off to their honeymoon, both Marcus and Victoria knew that their best innovations were still ahead of them, both in the laboratory and in life.